Well, I hope that you are doing well. I hope that you've had a good day today. I hope that your week's been good to you so far. I know we have several people that are sick or hurting in some way, and we definitely want to be praying for them. If you're sick or hurting and we don't know about it, please let us know so that we can be praying for you. I don't think we have any announcements, so we can jump straight in to our study for tonight. I hope you're excited to just reflect on something that is so pure and so meaningful. Of course, that being the Word of God. So we're in Genesis chapter 37, and I think we're all pretty familiar with this story, as Genesis is accustomed to doing. We close out the major section and begin the major section of a new character in the book of Genesis by mentioning the previous character and how he was. So verse 1, no surprise, Jacob lived in the land of his father, sojourning in the land of Canaan. These are the generations of Jacob. And then, of course, we're going to meet our new character. This is going to begin the portion of the Joseph narrative in the book of Genesis. So Joseph, being 17 years old, was pasturing the flock with his brothers. He was a boy with the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's wives, and Joseph brought a bad report of them to their father. So from the very beginning, us not even thinking about perhaps the hatred of the brothers that we know they had toward Joseph, because we know this story, but perhaps trying to look at this story with a fresh set of eyes, we kind of are set up to think, here's this 17-year-old boy, and all he does is, he watches his brothers work, and he's thinking about a report in his head to give to his dad. And when he gets home, he just unleashes on all the brothers, and there's just nothing good to say. Right. So we can see how Joseph is going to have some problems with his brothers because of this. Now, Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons because he was the son of his old age. You remember, I'm sorry, I've had allergies all week, so if I rub my eyes or sniff, I'm trying not to sneeze. It comes on in waves. You might remember that Jacob had Joseph by Rachel. Remember, Rachel was barren, and she was, all but desperate for a child. And she's finally able to have one, and her first one is Joseph. And of course, Joseph's name means something like add, right? So she wants the Lord to add another child to her, to give her another child. And of course she does, and that child's name is Benjamin. And Benjamin ultimately leads to the death of Rachel because she has Benjamin and then she dies after giving birth. But here we go. We know that Jacob loved Rachel more than he loved Leah. So as you can imagine, when Jacob laid his eyes on Joseph, these two were bonded from the very beginning. Now, because he was the son of his old age, and because he loved him more, notice, he made him a robe of many colors. So this would have been, nobody really knows what this robe of many colors was, but probably would have been something like some kind of ornamented robe, right? And who wears robes? Well, people of status, people that are superior to others. They're the ones that wear the robes. And notice that this is not helping Joseph's case with his brothers, right? He's walking around with this robe on that they don't have, and, sort of sending the message that I'm dad's favorite, and this is why I get to go out with y'all, and I step back and watch y'all work, and then I bring a report to dad. So things aren't looking too good for Joseph. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, notice this, they hated him and could not speak peacefully to him. They couldn't enjoy each other's company. They did not want to be in the presence of Joseph. They thought in their minds, nothing good can come from us interacting with him. We're better off without him. So let's keep that thought in mind, because we'll see that as the story unfolds. Now Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. He said to them, "Hear this dream that I have dreamed. Behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and behold, my sheaf arose and stood upright. And behold, your sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to my sheaf." His brothers said to him, "Are you indeed to reign over us, or are you indeed to rule over us?" So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. So notice, it's not like enough for Joseph just to walk around in this robe, showing off how he is the favored child. Joseph is now having these pretty bizarre dreams, right? Where his brothers are bowing down to him. Now, we kind of want to stop at this point in the story and say, Joseph, like, what is your point in communicating this to your brothers? You know that they already hate you. What good did you expect to come from this? But no doubt, we know as the story unfolds that this dream's going to come to fruition. But notice his brothers, like, they sort of interpret their own fate. They don't have to ask Joseph, what does this dream mean? They know exactly what this dream means, and obviously they're not happy about it. So then he dreamed another dream and told it to his brothers and said, "Behold, I dreamed another dream. Behold, the sun, the moon, and 11 stars were bowing down to me." But when he told it to his father and to his brothers, his father rebuked him and said to him, "What is this dream that you have dreamed?" Now, this time, Daddy gets a little upset because he's also involved in this dream. And it says he rebuked him. Now, I think we know what a rebuke is, right? It's a harsh word that is spoken in order to put an end to whatever, we'll put this in quotes, even though it's not, nonsense going on, right? And this is exactly what Jacob spoke up to do. Joseph, stop this, right? You're not going to say that. In fact, he'll say, "Shall I and your mother and your brothers indeed come to bow ourselves to the ground before you?" But notice his brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the saying in mind. Now, the fact that they were jealous gives us a little insight, perhaps indirectly, in how they viewed dreams. And we'll come back to that point in just a minute. But notice this, even though that Jacob seems to have been a bit bothered by this dream, he still keeps it in mind. He still thinks about what this is that Joseph had to say. He doesn't dismiss it. He thinks about the possibility that this could actually happen. Well, notice his brothers went to pasture their father's flock near Shechem, and Israel said to Joseph, "Are not your brothers pasturing the flock at Shechem? Come, I will send you to them." And he said to him, "Here I am." So he said to him, "Go now, see if it is well with your brothers and with the flock, and bring me word." So he sent him from the valley of Hebron, and he came to Shechem. So why in the world is Jacob wanting to send Joseph to Shechem? Well, we might just think, well, it seems pretty obvious from the text, right? That, he hasn't heard anything from the brothers. Something could have happened, so why not send somebody else to investigate what's going on? But notice the location of where the brothers were supposed to be shepherding the flock. They were supposed to be at Shechem. Now, what do we know has happened previously in Shechem? Well, remember, this is where Dinah is raped by Shechem, and of course the brothers of Dinah seek to deceive Shechem and his father and tell them that, we'll make a covenant with you if all your men will be circumcised. So Shechem's father does a pretty good job of convincing the men to want to be circumcised. So as they're circumcised and they're down in pain, remember that Simeon and Levi come in with the sword and they kill every man, and the rest of the brothers like plunder the city. So perhaps Jacob is thinking, it's not far-fetched to think, somebody might try to retaliate. Somebody might have hurt my sons because of what we did a while back. So, he sends Joseph, and a man found him, that is Joseph, wandering in the fields. And the man asked him, "What are you seeking?" "I am seeking my brothers," he said. "Tell me, please, where are they pasturing the flock?" And the man said, "They have gone away, for I have heard them say, 'Let us go to Dothan.'" So Joseph went after his brothers and found them at Dothan. Now notice verse 18. "They saw him from afar, and before he came near to them, they conspired against him to kill him." Now, how is it that they were able to identify Joseph at a distance? Well, I think we know. What was Joseph probably wearing? He was probably wearing that ornamented robe. And you can imagine as they see this, we have to wonder at this point in the story, why was Joseph even back home? Why wasn't he with the brothers shepherding the flock? That's what he was doing at the beginning of chapter 37, so why isn't he with them now? Well, two options, and maybe both options are correct. Jacob didn't want anything to happen to Joseph, and he knew that anything could happen should they take a journey to shepherd the flock, and if anything was going to happen, he didn't want something to happen to Joseph. So he kept Joseph by his side, close to him, to ensure that Joseph was safe. But also, we know that the brothers have grown in their hatred toward Joseph. We know that the brothers are jealous toward Joseph. They don't have anything peaceful. They don't say anything peaceful to him. They didn't want him around, right? They'd rather do his share of the work. They'd rather go out by themselves and not have to look at him, not have to think about him, not have to talk about him, because all he does is just anger them, really. So they see him from afar off. And of course, their hatred and jealousy now has just led them to think, let's just kill him. Like our lives would be so much better. So they said to one another, "Here comes this dreamer." Now I think we see this and we're just like, oh, what a shot, here comes this dreamer. But remember, I said those dreams mean something. Those brothers knew. They were afraid when Joseph told them this dream because, dreams meant something in the ancient Near East. If a person had a dream, some people thought this is like foresight into what was actually going to happen in the future. So if this dream involved you and you don't like what the future holds for you, well, how do you change the future? Well, the only way that you can change the future is to kill the one that had the dream, to squash him like a bug, right? Well, he has this dream. They don't like it. They see him from afar off. And what are they thinking? Obviously, let's kill him. So, come now, let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits. Then we will say that a fierce animal has devoured him, and we will see what will become of his dreams. Notice again, the dreams are what really have really bothered them. This is what has led them to really want to kill Joseph. They do not want to think about a life in which they bow down to Joseph. Joseph, in their minds, walks around and thinks that he is superior to them, but they have not bought in to that idea, even though Joseph shows him favor, more favor, we might say. So, of course, here's this plan. It's not far-fetched to say, something happened to Joseph on his way and he just died. But notice Reuben heard it. When Reuben heard it, he rescued him out of their hands, saying, "Let us not take his life." Now, Reuben, oldest child, right? He has to step up for his brother. No, we can't do this. Now we have to wonder, is it because that he actually likes Joseph, or is it because he knows what it will do to his father and he doesn't want to, he doesn't want to bring shame on his father by having to deceive him that his son has died. Who knows? But Reuben said to them, "Shed no blood. Throw him into this pit here in the wilderness, but do not lay a hand on him, that he might rescue him out of their hand to restore him to his father." Well, of course, it seems Reuben was thinking about his father, because after they want to kill him, what does he say? Throw him into the pit. Well, that doesn't sound very good, right? That still sounds like a punishment. Why would Reuben suggest that? Why not just squash the plan altogether? Well, it seems like Reuben was just thinking, let me just keep him alive somehow. Like, my brothers are committed to wanting to kill him, and if I can just keep him alive, well, then I'll have more time to think about a plan going forward. So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the robe of many colors that he wore. So, the robe really does a number on their emotions. And they took him and threw him into a pit. The pit was empty, there was no water in it. But they sat down to eat, and looking up they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead with their camels bearing gum, balm, and myrrh on their way to carry it down to Egypt. Now you'll notice that these goods that the Ishmaelites are carrying, they're going to Egypt. Well, what in the world are the Egyptians going to do with these goods? A number of things, right? We know that the Egyptians embalmed people. We know that the Egyptians had medicine. We know that the Egyptians used these types of things in rituals for worship. So there's a number of things that the Egyptians were doing with these. So people would travel back and forth carrying goods down to Egypt. Well, then Judah said to his brothers, "What profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother, our own flesh." Of course, Reuben has this, not Reuben, Judah has this idea, right? Like, killing him is too far. He is our own flesh and blood, we might say. So let's not do that. Yes, we need to do something to him. So let's just sell him. Okay, we want him out of our sight. This will kill two birds with one stone. His blood isn't on our hands, and, he will be out of our presence. So they draw him from the pit, they lift him up, they sell him to the Ishmaelites, the text says, for 20 shekels of silver, and then they take Joseph down to Egypt. But notice when Reuben returned to the pit and saw that Joseph was not in the pit, he tore his clothes and returned to his brothers and said, "The boy is gone, and where shall I go?" Then they took Joseph's robe and slaughtered a goat and dipped the robe in the blood and sent the robe of many colors and brought it to their father and said, "This we have found. Please identify whether is it your son's robe or not." And he identified it and said, "It is my son's robe. A fierce animal has devoured him. Joseph is without doubt torn to pieces." Now this strikes me as odd. Why did Reuben let the other brothers go forward with this plan of trying to deceive Jacob into thinking that Joseph was dead? He didn't want to do that in the first place, and the brothers have sold him. They haven't even killed him, so why make the father think that? They could just say something happened. They don't necessarily have to say, like he's dead. And perhaps they wanted their father just to think an accident happened and they didn't have to say whether he was dead or not. They just let Jacob come to that conclusion on his own, which seems to be the case. So then Jacob tore his garments and put sackcloth on his loins and mourned for his son many days. So all his sons and all his daughters rose up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted and said, "No, I go down to Sheol. I shall go down to Sheol to my son mourning." Thus his father wept for him. Meanwhile, the Midianites sold him in Egypt to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard. So Jacob is crushed, as any parent would be, I would think. But particularly because he loved Joseph more. And notice there's nothing that his sons or daughters can say to him to comfort him. He thinks life is over. So that's where we'll stop. We'll pick up next week in the next chapter. I hope you have a great rest of the week. God bless.